About a week ago, I was writing a video on the concept of Mike and who he could be. I talked about his connection to Spamton. This made me think a lot about what's even going on with Spamton. For years, Spamton was by far the strangest and most eccentric character in Deltarune. A living spam mail ad, he's a guaranteed encounter in Deltarune Chapter 2. He lives in a dumpster. He speaks with parentheses over important words, even sometimes changing them. He talks of deals and claims he's a salesman, but doesn't want money. He longs for something called quote-unquote hyperlink blocked. He doesn't speak of money, but Cromer. He talks a lot about freedom. And then there's the Pippus. What the hell is that even supposed to be? There's a lot to unpack, and that's just your initial encounter with him. This absolute mess of a man is very hard to go through, so I apologize if I stumble a little bit. Today I'm going to attempt to explain the entire story from start to finish of Spamton G. Spamton, then give some of my own personal theories about what be going on throughout the way. But just to warn you ahead of time, there's a lot that makes no sense, so a few of these conclusions are a little bit far-flung. Spamton was once just a regular Addison, an NPC type from Chapter 2. The Addisons are salespeople with long noses. He lived a pretty normal life. He was just a regular salesman, but quote-unquote a little unsuccessful. His products never hit. His money was mostly spent on drinks with his friends at the local cyber grill, often shooting his mouth about how he would be a big shot. One day, he received a strange phone call. Most presume, and me as well, this to be W.D. Gaster. Then, suddenly, he became wildly successful. For no apparent rhyme or reason, his products began to skyrocket. He became the face of ads around the city, even moving into a luxury suite in the Queen's mansion. In the game, we see various old posters with his face on them. From there, he started to lose his friends. He was on the phone with that mysterious person all the time. He acted boastful. He was spending less and less time with his friends and more making money. Eventually, his ego grew to match his company and everyone abandoned him. He had done it. He was a big shot. Why should he care if his friends wanted to hang out with him? Before I start talking about the fall of Spamton, I feel we really need to talk about Tenna and his relationship to Spamton. Tenna is the Dreamer's CRT television, and his main motivation is to be watched and be an entertainer. He especially enjoyed when the Dreamers and Holidays would come together to watch the holiday specials. Then Des Holiday disappears, then Asgore and Torgo got divorced, Rudy got sick, and Noelle and Carol were too busy. So, Tenna is less and less watched over the years. Naturally, this upset him. He became obsessed with the idea of being watched again and to be useful. One day, Chris and Azrael brought a laptop home. This was when Spamton and Tenna first met. Someone successful and someone on the brink of their career. Funny how the roles would switch later on. They became good friends. Spamton and Tenna co-starred on TV time for a short while. Spamton was enjoying his time in the TV world and was planning to teach Tenna how to use technology to become more relatable. You see, Tenna blamed the fact that no one wanted to watch him anymore to his own obsolescence. He was a CRT in the relatively modern age, after all. He thought that if he learned how to be newer, he could be useful again. Tenna was constantly asking Spamton what his secret was, how he became a big shot. He gave all of his advice for that one notion, but Spamton was still hesitant to give it. Then, we know a couple of things happened. First, we know that Tenna stole, or tried to steal, something from Spamton, given how Spamton continually refers to him as a crook before we meet him. Some have theorized that it may have been his shadow crystal, but I personally don't think that Spamton acquired that until after his fall. No, what I propose Tenna might have stolen from Spamton was the Pippus. Hear me out, I know this is a little bit far-flung. We know that the Pippus are an invasive species of freshwater clam. We know that Spamton uses them for his attacks, and they were involved with his marketing in some way. We also know that the TV dinners have a strange blue caviar in them. Finally, we know that Tenna has a Pippus. Not just a Pippus, but a rare female one. I think we can put two and two together here. Tenna thought the secret to Spamton's success was the Pippus, stole a Pippus, which made more Pippi? I don't even know, which he then grinded up to make the TV dinners. Spamton was unaware of this until he left the TV world sometime later. Speaking of which, let's talk about that. One day, Tenna had finally convinced Spamton to tell him of his secret, how he became a big shot. Then, Spamton got another phone call. His face fell, and he ran out of Tenna's office. The next day, Chris and Azriel took a laptop back to the library. Naturally, this draws a lot of suspicion from everyone involved. However, the thing that's most important is that Spamton's friend on the phone did not want him telling Tenna about who he was. This further supports evidence that is a character who does not want to be noticed, which in this case I feel applies quite well to Gaster. The fall. Slowly, step by step, Spamton was losing money. He didn't understand. Even his friend on the phone was silent. He'd been told to come back to Cyberworld, and he did. Spamton had received an eviction notice. His company was failing, and he couldn't afford to keep staying at the Queen's mansion. He had no idea what he was going to do. All of his friends were gone. He couldn't pay off his debt. And the voice on the phone, his phone was ringing. He picked it up instantly. The voice could help him. The voice was never wrong. The voice helped him become what he was. He owed the voice. A garbled voice spoke from the phone. The Queen's basement. Find the key. There you will find what you seek. Yes, of course. Surely the voice was right. He could sneak by, perhaps by disguising himself as that butler. What was his name? Swatch, that was it. He needed to follow the voice. It was his only hope. And with that notion, the man who had once been in Addiston stood up and walked towards his inevitable insanity. That was a Tumblr post portraying the steps going up to Spamton's insanity from his perspective. And while uncanon, I feel it does an incredibly good job of explaining the downfall of Spamton and what led him to do what he did. His business was failing, he was facing eviction, and the voice on the phone told him to go to the basement. To get there, he attempted to disguise himself as Swatch, down to the suit and the yellow and pink glasses. Then he found the lost Megaton Neo body with a shadow crystal in it. It was only through looking in the lens of the shadow crystal that Spamton saw his strings, how everyone was a puppet, how he was a puppet. He began worshipping the artifact. Whether this referred to the body or the crystal, we don't know. He believed that only if he had the body, he could be free, to reach beyond, as he says in his pre-fight dialogue, to reach heaven. It was then that he was discovered by the Queen and Swatch, who threw him into the Queen's acid pit to teach him a lesson. Due to multiple references to burning eyes and the fact that Spamton is never seen without his trademark sunglasses, many have inferred that Spamton's eyes were damaged, and we can infer from his, at times, lack of perception and wondering where he is, that he is partially or even completely blind. Ironic, because he claims he is the only one who can see the strings. I want you to imagine yourself in Spamton's place for a second. You've just been betrayed by the last person you can call a friend. Then you've worked your butt off just to find something that tells you that your free will is an illusion. And then you get tossed into a pool of corrosive battery acid. This is when Spamton's mind fully left him. He'd been reduced to mad ramblings of freedom, or if he just had enough money, or if he could just get to that body. He'd been reduced to living in a dumpster and selling frayed bow ties in the trash zone. His physical form withered, and he was a mere husk of himself. Then Chris arrived. Chris was someone else being controlled, a puppet, but aware of it, just like him. He reversed to his old ways, tried to make a deal, and surprisingly, it worked. Spamton agreed with Chris to meet at the shop in the trash zone. It is worth noting that the repeated connections between Spamton and the phone. During his shop theme dial tone, we can repeatedly hear the ringing of a phone in the background that is not picked up. In addition, during his fight, he has multiple phone-based attacks, multiple notes factoring into his obsession with the voice on the phone. Once Chris returns with the empty disc, Spamton uploads himself onto it, and we take it back to the Mettaton Neo body. Then, at first, nothing seems to happen. So Chris leaves. Then suddenly, Spamton appears in all of his Neo glory. Finally, he's larger. He has power. Surely he can break his springs now. But no, they've just become more visible. Then he realizes what he needs. He doesn't have determination. He needs a human soul. And the only human in the dark world is right in front of him. As I mentioned in my previous theory on the greater story of Deltarune, Spamton is very delusional during the fight, imagining a fake audience. The context for this is the following lines. Quote, Spamton turns to the audience and laughs. Spamton appeals to the audience with a festive jig. Spamton begs the audience to stop taking the furniture out of his room. Spamton begs to the audience. Spamton prays to the audience. There is no audience. The stage lights are shattered. During the Spamton Neo fight, his insanity is driven almost tenfold, and some has suggested that he is in a stroke-like state. Personally, I believe that as he goes through this, he's flashing back to his time with Tenna, thinking of his own partner as he rambles on about talking about the soul, about reaching heaven, as he talks about a mythical audience. Side note, reaching heaven is a topic I would like to cover in another video, as there are a lot more references to it than you'd think. Another thing I would like to point out is the battle text. Quote, it pulls the strings and makes them ring. Pulls the strings obviously is in reference to whatever is controlling Spamton, and makes them ring is probably in reference to the ringing phone. What I think this may be implying is that the person on the end of the phone and the entity pulling the strings may be one and the same, which once again supports the theory that it could be Gaster. However, recently, I've seen a few people on the internet saying that potentially this could refer to the Roaring Night. A lot of people believe that December holiday is the night, which I will admit is very plausible. Pulls the strings and makes them ring could be in reference to Dessa's guitar in addition to being reference to the voice on the phone and whoever's controlling Spamton. While I'm not sure about this because the Death Knight theory does not state that she is fully in control, I felt it was worth mentioning. You can either win the fight by snapping Spamton's strings or fight him until he overheats. However, if you do snap his strings, he falls and crashes, rather than being freed. He's free, but he can't survive without his strings. After the fight, he has what I feel are some topical words to say. Quote, it seems after all that I couldn't be anything more than a simple puppet. But you three, you're strong. Maybe you three can break your own strings. Let me become your strength. It is at this point that he turns into either the deal maker or the puppet scarf depending on your win condition. A mere observer from your inventory. That is, until the Chapter 3 secret room scene where he comes out of your inventory to see Tenna, but due to his extreme transformation and lack of sanity, is unrecognized by his old partner. While on the surface a funny scene, this hammers home what has happened to Spamton, and how he's almost unrecognizable to the people who were once his friends. This shows just how far he's come. Comparing Spamton's image to the character we meet is downright depressing. He's lost his recognition, his money, his friends, and his sanity. Although a funny character, Spamton's backstory is personally one of the most depressing I have ever seen. And I feel like it was going to run deeper in future chapters given all the connections to pink and gold. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, I have other Deltarune content. I have an overview on Deltarune's deeper meanings, which explores more on the weird route and how Spamton relates to that. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a video on Mike, and how he became the absolute legend he is within the fan base. Once again, thank you for watching, and see you next time.